Thank you for watching Syrian Eats. Today our recipe is a traditional Syrian recipe called Koosa باللبن or Sheikh المحشي, which consists of Calbacita squash hollowed out and stuffed with meat and then cooked in a yogurt sauce. This is a very delicate and delicious recipe, and I'm going to show you how to make it step by step. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to wash our Calbacita, or gray squash is what it's called. And we're going to take off the stem and the bottom, and then we're going to start hollowing it out with a core. I'll tell you, I'm not a pro at hollowing it out. I'm still learning. Want to hollow out the inside enough to be able to stuff it with meat. I added about 1/3 of a cup of ghee, and I'm going to saute my ground beef in. I used 1 pound of ground beef, and I added 1 teaspoon of salt and 1 teaspoon of allspice. Now, if you don't have ghee, you can use butter or whatever shortening you usually use to saute your meat in. After your meat is fully cooked, go ahead and plate it up and set it aside so it can cool. While it's cooling, I'm going to add a little bit of butter and 1/2 cup of pine nuts, and I'm going to saute it. Now, pine nuts is optional, but it does taste really good with the pine nuts. Saute your pine nuts until they are golden brown. If you feel like it's starting to reach that golden color, turn off the heat because that butter will still stay hot and it'll still cook those pine nuts. My ground beef has cooled enough for me to touch it. This is optional, but it is traditional. You can add pine nuts to the ground beef whenever you're stuffing your squash. Now, my kids don't like pine nuts very much, so I'm not going to add it to mine. I'm going to reserve my pine nuts to top it off in the end. After stuffing your squash, make sure you push the meat in with your finger just to make sure that there's no air bubbles in between, and also to squeeze out any excess juices. After stuffing your squash, add 3/4 of a cup of ghee or butter to your saucepan, and we're going to fry our stuffed squash until they are a golden brown. Make sure you flip your squash so it can get evenly golden on all sides. And this is what your squash is going to look like when it's ready to take out. And do the same thing for the rest. I used about 10 pieces of squash. In a separate pot, I added 7 cups of plain yogurt. Now this is my homemade yogurt. You can use store-bought if you don't have any. Now if you haven't seen my video on how to make homemade yogurt, I'm going to put the link in the description box below. Strain your yogurt through a mesh strainer. Then add 1 egg and put it through the strainer. Now I don't have my heat on. This is still cold yogurt because we still need to add our cornstarch. Then mix in 1/3 cup of cornstarch and add 1½ teaspoon of salt. Use a whisk to cook your yogurt so you won't get any lumps and you'll have a smooth texture. After whisking in all the ingredients, turn your heat on to medium and start stirring your yogurt around until it starts thickening. After your yogurt comes up to a boil, add your cooked squash. Gently mix in your squash in the yogurt and let it cook for about 10 minutes. Now it's time to plate up your cooked squash and yogurt. This recipe is usually eaten where the yogurt has cooled off to room temperature, but your squash is still warm. Serve it with vermicilli rice and top it off with the pine nuts. If you haven't seen my vermicilli rice recipe, I will put that link in the description box below as well. Thank you for watching this delicious and healthy recipe. I hope you enjoyed watching it. Don't forget to give me a thumbs up, share, and subscribe. Follow my page on Instagram and like my page on Facebook so you can get all the latest recipes. And I enjoy watching the remakes of my recipe. So if you do remake my recipe, please send me a picture, either direct message me on Instagram or on Facebook. Thank you for watching.